Collecting football cards is awesome. Collecting football cards on a budget, that's awesome too. Happy Hobby, I'm David Gonson. If you're a sports card collector and you're working with limited budget, that's what this channel is about. That's what my Substack is about, gonis.substack.com. That's what our podcast is about, the Happy Hobby Sports Cards Podcast. Search for it on Apple and Spotify. That's what it's all about. That's what we talk about. And today, specifically, we're talking about how to collect football cards on a limited budget. Now, the first thing you have to know about collecting football cards on a limited budget is there's different types of cards. If you're just getting back into this hobby from the 80s or the 90s, remember the Topps ruled the world, and Upper Deck was a big deal. There's a lot of different cards in the 90s that were produced. Right now, you just have to know Panini owns the football card license. So Panini produces the football cards now for the next 2 years. Then Fanatics takes over and they own the Topps brand. So they'll start doing football cards in Topps brand once again. But for right now, collecting football cards on a limited budget means if you're buying new cards, it means you're buying from Panini. So what does that mean? There's a few they make many different brands. Panini has several different football card brands. The first one, there's a couple that are really their flagship ones. That's the Panini Prism is pretty much considered their flagship. Donruss Optic, which I love as well. Those are like the two best as far as I'm concerned of their premium. That's not $1,000 boxes basically. Now, those are chromium cards. Also, Panini Select. Those are all chromium cards, which means they're a little thicker. They've got the shine to them. They're kind of like Topps Chrome, if you know Topps Chrome. So those are a little more expensive cards. I don't suggest buying boxes of those cards if you're working with a limited budget, because you're talking about getting a box with not a ton of cards. Maybe it has a guaranteed auto in there, but even then they say guaranteed on average. So my point to you is those cards are expensive cards. If you want to get Prism cards of a certain player, just buy the single of that player in those brands. Be a little expensive for that single, but you'll probably still come out ahead in the long haul. The other three brands that I want to talk about, the other two brands that I want to talk about that are paper products, not the chromium, but are Panini Donruss and Panini Score. Now, you know Donruss and Score, you know those from the 80s and 90s. Those are brands we've known from past 30, 40 years. But Panini Donruss is a paper product for Donruss Optic, which is the chrome product. Same card, essentially. Some of the numbering's different. There's a few differences, but rated rookies, which are my favorite things because I'm a junk wax collector from back in the day, and those were awesome. So I love the Panini Donruss brand. Now, you can find Donruss blasters and boxes much cheaper than the Prism and the Select and the Donruss Optic. So there's also more cards in these Donruss and Score packs. They also come out earlier than the more expensive boxes. So in my opinion, get those cards. If you're trying to collect on a limited budget, if you're not a flipper or an investor or someone who's got their mortgage wrapped up in it, just buy Donruss and Score for the blasters and the hobby boxes and such. Buy singles of the chromium cards that you want specifically. And you might get some awesome cards. You might get good parallels in the Donruss cards. You can buy a CJ Stroud. Say right now you're kind of getting back into it and you missed out on 2023 and now everything's super expensive. You can buy a PSA 9 Donruss. You can buy a PSA 10. Let's say that. PSA 10 Donruss CJ Stroud rated rookie card for about $70-$75. Now, that's kind of expensive, I understand, but it's a graded card. It's a PSA 10. There are no cards better. There are no grades better than that graded card. So that's a pretty good investment if you're trying to get in on something after missing out on it last year. Now, if you want to just get a CJ Stroud rookie card that looks awesome and is awesome, just get the PSA 9, which you can get for less than $25. PSA 9. Just get that. Rated rookie CJ Stroud base card. It's awesome. Now, if you want to get a parallel, you can do that and spend a little bit more. But the point is you can still collect on a limited budget, have cool graded cards, enjoy your collection, invest in players that are on the rise. You can do that. You don't have to spend $1 billion just to get involved in the hobby. Number 2. Now, this is going to be fast and loose. I'm going to kind of be talking and looking at my notes and all that stuff. Number 2, quarterbacks is where it's at. Quarterbacks are what you want. Everything else, it's unlike baseball. Baseball, there's all different kind. Basketball, you can get scores at different positions. Quarterbacks, it's all about the quarterback position and collecting football cards. So just remember that. Don't get too wrapped up into trying to get this year's big rookie receiver and putting out a ton of money for this rookie running back that you think is going to be amazing. You can still get their cards, but you don't want to outlay too much money to go after that stuff when in 2 or 3 years, everyone's just going to be caring about the 2024 quarterback class. Nobody cares about the running backs. It's just how it is. I don't know why it's like that. It's not like that in any other sport, but that's how it is. Wide receivers are second. Wide receivers are second most popular, and then running backs, and then tight ends, and then it's just like a flat line after that. Definitely not defensive players and offensive linemen and punters and none of that. None of that. It's all about quarterbacks. So it's good to remember. It's good to think of it like that. Running backs, number 3 tip. Running backs are like guacamole. Like they're good for like one day, and then they go bad. So it's similar because look at the past 25 years. The best running backs over the 25 years, since 2000, you can buy a PSA 9 of the 2 best running backs since 2000 for a total of like $75. Get Adrian Peterson and a LaDainian Tomlinson PSA 9 rookie cards. Yeah, they're not people, and those are amazing ones. So now you're talking about these days when they're going through when they're going through running backs in general, like tissues in a Kleenex box, like running backs are not what they used to be, what we remembered growing up collecting. Commons are much more commonier in football than they are of any other sport. Like I mentioned, football is a little different than the other ones. The position players, scores in basketball is different. Football, it's just something about it, just a little different. So why does that matter that commons are a little more common? Because in baseball, you can hold on to common cards. Same with basketball, you can hold on to commons and especially like common rookie cards, like lower grade rookie, lower tiered rookie players. And in 2 or 3 years, you can check back and they might be something amazing. They might be good cards to hold on to. But in football, it's really look at year 2. And if you don't know by year 2 if they're anything, then you can move on from them. So the 5th thing I want to mention is vintage cards in football card collecting. Vintage cards are cheap. You can go back into the 50s and get some pretty awesome graded football cards from Topps for great prices, pretty low prices. You can get amazing players, especially if you're not targeting quarterbacks. If you just want amazing players from your favorite team from that era, you can get them graded relatively cheap. Number 6, this is an opportunity to collect older players on the cheap. And that's what I'm saying here is go back, get some of your favorite players that were your dad's favorite players maybe. Maybe it's players that you've heard about. They're legends you've seen on NFL Network. Go back and get some of those guys. Get cards of those guys. That's what I see, these colorful ones up here. Those are from like the 58, I believe, 58, 59 set. Go back and get those awesome cards. They're amazing. They're great players. Something about the NFL, they just go from what's happening right now and what's happening next year. That's just how it is. Different than basketball and baseball, but football. Number 7, this is also an opportunity for you to collect autograph cards of your favorite players from the past however many years, 15 years since they've been autographing cards. Much cheaper than if you got autograph cards in other sports from those years. Now, obviously, if it's an awesome player, if you're a big fan of the Packers and it's an Aaron Rodgers autograph, well, that's going to be expensive. But let's say you're a Buccaneers fan. I can get Derek Brooks and John Lynch and Mike Allstott. I can get autograph cards of theirs all for $50 or less. Graded in a lot of cases. So think of it like that. It's an opportunity to get some of your favorite players on autographed cards at a cheaper rate compared to other sports. And finally, my last tip on collecting sports cards in general or collecting football cards on a limited budget is take your time. Just enjoy the process of tracking these cards down, finding them, buying them, sorting them, collecting them, all that stuff. Just enjoy it. Take your time. Remember this. You have the rest of your life to collect cards. There's no rush. There's no finish line. You have to have it done by this date. You have the rest of your life. So just enjoy it. Go slow, appreciate it, and enjoy it. Whatever you do, make sure you have a happy hobby.